Alrighty, guys, today we're here with Gen Z BTC, and we're going to be asking him some questions about his Bitcoin journey and his channel that is absolutely blowing up the last few days. So I'm sure some of you have come over from his channel and joined this one. So hope you guys enjoy this one. Welcome, Jordan, Gen Z BTC.
What's up? What's up? Welcome back to a brand new episode of Gen Z BTC. It's me, Satoshi Guapamoto. Except this actually isn't Gen Z BTC. I'm here with my man Joey on Sats Ventures. So thank you for having me, man, and I'm excited for our conversation.
Nah, it's a pleasure, bro. I was an hour late today with the time zone, so I'm sorry about that, but it should be good. We've got my first question. I just wanted to ask you, like, what led you to Bitcoin initially, and then what was the biggest aha moment when it really hit you that Bitcoin was the thing to go all in on?
I would say I first got introduced to Bitcoin through Wall Street bets, right? So when GameStop was going crazy, I had got into it because my mom heard about it on TV, and she doesn't know anything about investing, you know what I mean? But she just happened to be watching a popular news channel at that time, and they were talking about it, right? So then I look into it, and I'm like, oh wow, I can make a lot of money doing this. All right, I knew nothing about investing. I didn't know what money was. You know what I'm saying? It just I was just some kid who just randomly stumbled upon this like gambling side of investing, right? So I get into that, and through Wall Street Bets, I learned about AMC, I learned about the Federal Reserve, I learned about the reverse repo market, and of course Bitcoin. All this different financial stuff all happening at once. And this was also the same time that the COVID lockdowns were kind of starting. I got a stimulus check, and then I decided, okay, I made a little money with GameStop. I made some with AMC. I'm gonna try to make some with this Bitcoin thing. So I put my stimulus check into it. It's going up. You know, I'm talking about it at work when I worked at a big box retailer, right? I was telling everybody, yeah, you know, I won't be working here too much longer. I'm rich. You know what I'm saying? Barely had any money. You know what I mean? It wasn't even really five figures, but it was just that was my introduction, you know. And then I would say years later, you know, like the end of 2022 or the end of 2023, that was when I really found out that Bitcoin was its own thing. It exists outside the system. It is a redefining of the monetary world order. And since then, I have not looked back. And I would credit my understanding to a YouTuber named Yoni Appleberg. You know, I'll always say that because his video about how Bitcoin proof of work works was one of the greatest videos of all time. And just got to give props to Yoni.
Yeah, awesome. It's so funny around that COVID period because I was getting stimulus checks over in Australia as well. I went from $150 a week at a petrol station to like $450 a week through stimulus checks. So the government was happy to just print as much as they wanted, hand over as much capital to young people as wanted. And like that is just cooked. And that's when I first realized, damn, like these guys don't just have that money sitting on the sideline. They are essentially just printing this money, handing it out like free candy. And I went from $150 to $450 a week, and I started smash buying like crappy crypto coins and casino coins. And but yeah, no, interesting time of the world where it was like a free money for everyone in COVID, and it really did sort of send Bitcoin to the moon temporarily. And then we saw that a lot of that capital was just stimulus checks, and it started to crash down. So it was a good time to sort of get in and out here and there, but now it's time to lock in for the long run. How do you live on? I know you did a recent video that went for like 50 minutes, really breaking this down, and I love this video. I recommend everyone to watch it. But how do you live on a Bitcoin standard day to day while we're only 3% global adoption? So we're essentially reliving 1998 to 1999 when the internet was at a similar global adoption, which is now 66% across the world with more than 5 billion people. So, how do you live on this Bitcoin standard even though it's only at 3% global adoption?
Yeah, and living on a Bitcoin standard, I was being maybe a little bit cheeky. You know, I don't 100% live on Bitcoin, of course. I can't exactly do that yet. But I try to spend Bitcoin when I can, and I save most of my net worth in Bitcoin. So I'll break it down here really quick. The way I like to do things is I want to minimize my dollar exposure as much as possible. And what that means is if I have $25,000 in savings, you know, I want to try to have at least $20,000 in Bitcoin, right? Because otherwise, it's just burning a hole in my pocket. Then let's say I've got $5,000 left And what I want to do as best as I can is I want to dollar cost average into Bitcoin over time. And I want to smash buy Bitcoin when it has a really, really red day, right? Or maybe I'll smash buy some MSTR when Bitcoin has a red day, something like that. In order for me to make sure that I still take care of all my expenses and buy my day to day stuff, I use credit cards, right? Because a credit card is actually cash that you don't really have to hold, right? A credit card is the bank holding the cash for you. So I know that different financial systems have different financial tools, but in the United States, you just have your credit card. Typically, they'll have a 0% interest rate for 12 months or for 18 months. And then after that, it's like 30%, 40%, something ridiculous. And that's why I don't carry a balance after the grace period, 0% is over. So what I like to do is I might take a credit card that has like a $2,000 limit, $5,000 limit, whatever. I'll just use that for my expenses, and I'll just make sure that that credit card never like flips the amount of value that I have in cash in my bank account. Right. Some people might live with a credit card to make sure that the balance never flips their Bitcoin stack. That would be kind of crazy, but I don't want to get in a situation where I ever have to sell Bitcoin. Right. So I just make sure that my credit cards have 0% interest and that they don't get so filled up that it's untenable, like it's unmanageable. Right? That's how I try to live my life on a Bitcoin standard. On top of that, if I'm ever going out with friends and we're splitting the bill, or if we're betting on something or whatever it might be, I always offer and say, hey, look, I can pay you back in Bitcoin, right? With my friends, especially that I know for a long time, I'm like, I'm either gonna pay for my check myself, or you're gonna pay for it, and then I'll pay you back in Bitcoin. I'm not gonna pay you back in dollars. You know what I mean? So you either have to accept Bitcoin or let me pay for my share. And that's like a way of like forced Bitcoin adoption, but it's like coercion, right? It's like, try this thing. You hear me talk about it. It's really not that hard. It's the same as Venmo. It's the same as PayPal. It's the same as Cash App. It's just as fast, but it's way more secure, and it actually gains value over time. So if I pay you back for this $10 burger right now, it'll only be $10 in Bitcoin terms, or in fiat terms. But that, 10,000 Satoshis, 12,000 Satoshis, 5 years down the line, you'll look back and you'll be like, oh, wow, this guy gave me $150 for this, So that's why I like to try using Bitcoin when I can. If Steak and Shake allows you to pay with Bitcoin, I will pay with Bitcoin. And a lot of people find that very controversial. I'm dropping a video about that. But long story short, Bitcoin is money, so money's meant to be spent. I like spending money.
I know you mentioned in your original video what a Bitcoin network payments versus Lightning looks like, but can you sort of just explain that for someone that doesn't understand that there's like layer two on Bitcoin that makes things instant settlement?
Yeah, the easiest way I can explain it is you have to imagine wiring someone money, right? Wiring someone money is not exactly digital, but you can transfer value across borders relatively quickly, but it's not super fast, right? It is a final settlement. Like if you wire someone money and then you try to reverse the transaction, it's very difficult, and I'm pretty sure the person on the other side has to agree to like send the money back. All right, it's not like you can just reverse the transaction by asking the bank and saying, "Oh, I made a mistake by entering the wrong number right here." You might get in a little bit of trouble. Now, on top of the wire transfer system, which is the final settlement layer, very hard to reverse, not super fast, you build on top of that something like Visa, right? So you have your credit cards on top of FedWire, right? In the United States, we have the FedWire system. So you build credit cards on top of wire transfers, and credit cards can be reversed more easily because they don't settle instantly. When you buy something at a coffee shop with a credit card, it's going to say processing in your credit card app for maybe 2 to 3 days because it's still getting batched up and the transactions are still getting settled and processed and dealt with by Visa or by MasterCard or whoever is handling those transactions, right? And then even then, 10 days later, 12 days later, 15 days later, you would still be able to reverse a credit card transaction because they're just not final. They have to kind of settle and then batch up and then they get sent through Fedwire. That's kind of like the final, move, but that takes multiple days, if not weeks, right? With Bitcoin, we have the Bitcoin base layer. The base layer, the base chain, the main chain, that's like wiring money. It's very final and it's pretty fast, but it's not super fast, right? It's not instantaneous. Lightning is kind of like credit cards that are built on top of the Bitcoin base layer. It's a lot faster, right? The transactions are slightly more reversible. You know, with Bitcoin, it's very hard to reverse any transactions, but if there was ever anything that you could try to redo, it would be a Lightning transaction compared to a base chain transaction. Once something's in the blockchain, it's not coming out, right? So once you uh, finalize a transaction on the base layer, it is what it is. It's there forever. With Lightning, you have a little bit more flexibility. And again, the fees on Lightning will be a little bit lower. They're a lot quicker. You know, if you try to wire money, the transfer fee is quite high. Like if you're transferring, let's just call it $1,000, transfer fee for a wire might be like $30 or more. You know, whereas on the base Bitcoin base layer, sometimes you'll have high transaction fees. Right now, the transaction fees are very low, but sometimes you'll have moments where they're high. On the Lightning Network, um, transaction fees are almost always low, right? It's pretty cheap to transact on Lightning. So long story short, Lightning is like credit cards, and they're very fast, they're very quick payments that you can do. And this is how you pay for stuff at like a Steak and Shake, right? You use Lightning, right? And Lightning is just as fast as PayPal, just as fast as Venmo, just as fast as everything that you're already used to, except now you're using Bitcoin. You're using hard money to transact.
Yeah, awesome, man. You got that down pat. Do you sort of see like Bitcoin and Lightning like replacing the US dollar in our lifetime? Or will it be something that you see the US dollar sort of get backed by, so similar to gold before we went off the gold standard?
It's very hard to say because this is like a very far in the future thing. But when it comes to Bitcoin competing with the dollar, Michael Saylor will disagree. But I do either think he's just wrong or he's playing like a evil genius kind of like 40 chess type of thing where he can't really come out and say that Bitcoin's going to replace the dollar and destroy the US currency because if he does that, he's going to be in hot water. He owns most of the Bitcoin. He has a lot of Bitcoin. So he'll become a very big target pretty quickly. But I do think that in a system of money, money's always competing, right? Because you cannot really have a bunch of global reserve currencies, right? Sure, we have a bunch of currencies globally, but they're not the global reserve currencies. All right, there's only one, and right now it's the U.S. dollar. All right. In the future, I do think that reserve currency status will be relinquished. The dollar will not be the top dog. It won't be number one. And then Bitcoin will step up to take its place just because its properties of money are just better. It's just superior, right? So it won't just be the global store of asset or store of value asset. It'll be the global medium of exchange as well. It'll be the global reserve asset and the global reserve money. And the reason why I think that is something that was written about by Parker Lewis, right, who is an absolute goat over there at Unchained Capital, I believe is who he works for. And Parker Lewis was basically writing this amazing op-ed talking about friction when it comes to economies. And in a situation where Bitcoin becomes a reserve asset and a reserve currency, and you have dollars existing at the same time as Bitcoin, even if you try to back the dollar with Bitcoin, there are going to be situations where you try to transact in Bitcoin, but then you have to let's keep it to you and me, right? Let's say I have Bitcoin, you want dollars, but I pay for something, you know, in order to give it to you, I have to liquidate it into dollars, right? Then you get the dollars, and then maybe you purchase Bitcoin with it, whatever it might be. Like there's just too many steps involved. There's too much friction, right? Like if a business only accepts dollars and they don't want to accept Bitcoin, but Bitcoin's still like a reserve currency asset, they just don't have to accept it or whatever it might be. That means I have to liquidate my Bitcoin into dollars and then give it to them, instead of just going Bitcoin to Bitcoin, right? Peer to peer, just sending sats to sats. So when you add friction into an economy where it's unnecessary, you are hurting efficiency, right? And markets always want to try to be efficient. Economies want to try to be efficient. So in a world where Bitcoin is fully accepted, they're passing laws saying that, oh, businesses can accept Bitcoin or whatever it might be, or they must accept Bitcoin or it's legal tender or whatever. Naturally, the dollar will get pushed out of its place because the dollar will continue to lose value over time and Bitcoin will continue to gain value over time. So not only is it just the choice of a rational actor to hold mostly Bitcoin and to transact in Bitcoin, but it'll also just be something that will happen because the properties of Bitcoin are just better. They're just superior, right? Everyone wants to hold that asset. People don't really want to hold the dollars. And I think in the beginning, we're going to continue to see a lot of people trying to transact only in dollars because they lose value. But there's going to come a point where no one's going to want your dollars because they only lose value, right? So it's almost like this self-fulfilling prophecy. Because dollars lose value and because Bitcoin gains value, people are going to want to hold Bitcoin. Eventually, everyone's just going to be holding Bitcoin, and then that's when it's kind of has to be a medium of exchange. Does that happen in our lifetime? I think so. Yeah, guarantee happens in our lifetime. If we're assuming we live for another 60 years, yeah, I will say that guarantee to happen. But if I had to guess the exact date or how many years, I don't know. I say give it 25 years. 25 years from now, I think that the dollar might not be the global reserve currency anymore.
Yeah, awesome. Sort of, we'll take a little step back with. So World War One, World War Two happens, and essentially the US comes up on top, and they become the superpower of the world. Like they are the global reserve currency, and we sort of tick along. We're backed by gold, but maybe there's a little bit of funny business going on. Maybe they are printing a little more than they say they have gold. And then we get to 1971. Nixon comes out and says we're going off the gold standard, but don't worry. It essentially means we can go to this fiat dollar that's a lot more global, a lot more, expandable, whatever you want to call it. And we initially, I just don't think people understood what he said in that moment. I think the people around that time, like I was not around that time, that's for sure. And they would have just been like, what does this actually mean? Like, what does this even look like? This just allows us to do more with our dollars. And maybe it's not a big deal, whatever. I think there's sort of a delayed effect. I'd say between 1971 to sort of 2000, I think life is still quite affordable. Like people are still living off one income. Houses are affordable. You don't have to work 30, 40 years for a house. Your wife's at home. She's just chilling instead of working. You have five, six kids. You don't have all your kids in daycare because you can't afford to stay home. Like we see this trend as we go into the 2000s that life starts to catch up with us going from the gold standard, and the fiat dollar turns out maybe it wasn't the best idea, and all this printing maybe it wasn't the best idea. um like where do you think this is headed? Like where do you think, is life just going to continue to get more and more expensive, and what does that look like for someone holding the fiat dollar compared to someone that's holding Bitcoin?
Yeah, unfortunately, and no one likes to hear such a grim thing, but prices are never going down. Prices are literally going up forever. If you understand how the dollar works and the level that we're at, the point in the game that we're at when it comes to the fiat regime, prices are never going down. The reason why prices can't go down is because the debt has gotten to a point, and the interest on the debt has gotten to a point where it is not serviceable, and there's nothing left really to cut from government that would be substantial, right? So Doge over here in the U.S. can talk about how they're going to cut government waste and we're going to cut $2 trillion. That's literally never going to happen. What's most likely going to happen is they're just going to reallocate where they spend the 2 trillion. And then it is what it is. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing you can really do. It's essentially reached escape velocity, right? When the debt to GDP ratio is beyond 100%, beyond 110%, beyond 120%. It just keeps going. It's just snowballing because you can only print your way out of this level of deficit. And when you print your way out, what you're doing is you're debasing the currency, right? This is what Lawrence de Lepard talks about in The Big Print. This is what Lynn Alden talks about in Broken Money, what Seyfedina Moose talks about in The Bitcoin Standard, what Jeff Booth talks about in The Price of Tomorrow. So all these books, what they really have in common is that like they kind of understand that the dollar's weakness is that it can be printed at infinitum, and therefore it will be. And that's pretty much where we're at. So prices aren't going to crash, prices are going to melt up. And that's actually much worse because this is something that Mark Moss said. He was talking about how a great melt up is actually way worse than a crash because in a crash, you can always come back because you can buy cheap and then the prices are pretty much guaranteed to go back up anyway. So it's fine, you know. I mean, it's not fine, but it's better than a melt up because a melt up, the prices just go up and then they never come down ever. Until you have like a global monetary reset, you know what I mean? Or you have to throw the currency away and then start over from zero. So that's really bad, right? So like in World War II Germany, or like in Cyprus, or like different parts in like Egypt during hyperinflation, or like Roman Empire. You know what I mean? Like this has happened so many times before. But when you have a melt up where everything starts costing $1 million, you're never going back down ever. You know what I mean? Like the money's dead. You have to literally restart. It will never go back ever. So I think that's kind of where we're heading, you know. It doesn't all happen at once. It doesn't happen in one day, you know, but I think it does happen over time because there's really nothing you can do to stop the amount of spending that's already happened, the amount of entitlements that already exist, the amount of debt that needs to be serviced, the amount of treasuries that are maturing at different interest rates, and all the money that has to be paid back. It's just not good, you know, so they're cooked. What does that mean for a fiat holder versus a Bitcoin holder? Right? A fiat holder is going to continue to see prices skyrocket, but a Bitcoin holder is actually going to continue to see prices fall, right? And the reason why they're falling is because they're in Bitcoin terms. If you price things in Bitcoin, no matter how bad the inflation rate is, you're actually getting richer, right? Your purchasing power is actually going up. And the reason why is because Bitcoin is an asset, right? So when you look at the price of houses, of cars, of Rolexes, of yachts, of food, whatever you want to call it, you could say these are all assets. You know, food, you could say the commodities, whatever. But like these are assets. The price of assets are going to go up. Bitcoin is an asset that goes up more than any other asset ever in history. So if Bitcoin's going up faster than houses, it's going faster than cars, it's going up faster than the rate of inflation, it's going up faster than the S&P 500, it's going up faster than all equities, it's going faster than the Magnificent 7, then yeah, all those things are getting cheaper because Bitcoin isn't just an asset, it's also money, right? You know, it's digital gold. So when the money that I'm using is going up faster than the things that I want to buy, my life gets cheaper. You know, so if you understand that, you want to save in Bitcoin. You will literally put your life on a Bitcoin standard. You know, and then the reluctance is that, well, how do you know it's going to keep going up and blah blah blah. But that's where you go on your Bitcoin research journey. You know what I mean? That's when you go down the rabbit hole. That's where you try to figure out. This is my opinion. When I got into Bitcoin, I just tried to figure out how it could fail because I was like, dude, this is so amazing. There's no way this can work. I looked into it for like a month, you know, and I wasn't like some sort of super hardcore skeptic where I was just like, oh, this is stupid. This is a dumb idea. I thought this was the greatest idea ever. Let me see how it might not work. You know what I mean? Like, let me try to figure out, like, let me put my bias aside because I wasn't really a Bitcoiner yet. I was just a guy who just found out about Bitcoin. So I'm like, let me see if I can debunk this. Let me see if I can find some talking points against this. But couldn't really find anything, and here we are. So, long story short, fiat holders get poorer, Bitcoin holders get richer. Doesn't really matter what happens. So, at the end of the day, you have to play the game of life. You have to play the game of inflation, the game of money, and you can either play on the winning team or the losing team. All right. So, me personally, I would pick the winning team every time. But hey, that's just me. I don't know.
Well, that's an awesome way to put it. I love that. I think like referring back to how life is never gonna get cheaper, it's just gonna get more and more expensive. I love this idea that the closest we can get to a monetary reset is just opting into Bitcoin. And so we can actually do that now. And so if you really want to see deflation for the first time in your life, you can actually opt in on Bitcoin, and it's technically going to be deflationary around you if you're pricing things in Bitcoin. But if you're pricing things in fiat, it's just going to be inflation for the rest of your life. Um, I heard on Bitcoin Not Crypto's live stream that you orange pill like 2 to 3 people a week or something crazy like that. And I'd say even a minimum of one is like that would be in like the top 0.1% of people because it really does feel like one of those things that you try and push for, you try and bring up, and pretty quickly it's shut down unless you're very persistent. Um, but you obviously have this way where you can bring back the simplest terms possible for someone that is new to Bitcoin. What would be your approach? Say you had like 5 or 10 minutes with someone that has never even heard about Bitcoin, or maybe they've just heard the negative connotation that comes with it. What would be your go-to starting point, and then like how would you wrap up this conversation?
Um, Such a short time frame is really hard, but if it was like really short, I would kind of just ask them, well, what do you know about Bitcoin? And instead of like kind of like fighting them on it or arguing with them on it, you kind of just have to understand where they're coming from and just try to guide them to the truth without it seeming like a debate. And the reason why I'm able to orange pill a lot of people is because one, the office that I work in is kind of big, and two, the people, they know me already. You know what I mean? So like, this is a friend, someone who they view as competent. Telling them about this Bitcoin thing in a way that they maybe never had it explained before. So one thing that you can also focus on is like, what do people care about? So if they're like very big on humanitarian type stuff and like helping refugees and helping people who have been displaced and been treated badly by their government, and they don't like fascist and all that, then you can kind of take that angle about how Bitcoin is freedom and Bitcoin is a second chance. Bitcoin is a bank that you can have in your brain and then take anywhere with you, instead of having to uproot your whole life and then try to put it on your back, right? You can just put it in your head. And that's very powerful. You know what I mean? That's something very amazing. That's the awesome part of Bitcoin no one really talks about, because we don't really have to deal with that, at least not at the moment. But if it ever was something that came up, that's something that we could try to do, right? If they're very much conservative and they care about conserving their values, they don't want all their value being stolen by the collective or by governments or by immigrants and having all their money go towards a bunch of stuff that they don't agree with and that they don't like, that they view as progressive garbage, then you could say that Bitcoin is literally conservation of energy. It's the most conservative thing in the universe. You literally put your economic energy into it. There's also electrical energy being put into it every day, and it's conserving that energy. It's transforming it and then conserving it. It's not leaking energy. On top of that, it's not something that the collective controls. It's not something that big pharma controls or big social media, big liberal tech controls. It's something that individuals control, actually. So if you're tired of getting canceled and having your banks shut off because you say the wrong things and have the wrong opinions, then you can just opt into Bitcoin, which is something that nobody controls, and it actually makes you above the corporation. It puts you above the hedge fund. It puts you above big pharma. So like that's two different ways, like how a libtard and a conservatard can both have an agreement on the same thing. Like, oh, wow, Bitcoin actually is amazing. Like, yeah, obviously, you know what I mean. So like, you just have to like pitch it however they want to hear it. You know what I mean? Because it really does do both of those things. Bitcoin's the only thing in the world that solves the problem of both poor people and rich people at the same time, of liberals and conservatives at the same time, of, anyone who's on the opposite side of the spectrum. Bitcoin solves both these people's problems at the same time. There's nothing else in the world that does that.
Yeah, I love this idea that Bitcoin is like neutral. Like it doesn't matter if you swing Republican or Democratic or like all these other crazy stuff that happens. It's like this benefits essentially anyone that opts in, and you actually can meet on common ground and understand, hey, we all just want better money, we all just want an improved economy, and if politicians aren't going to get us there, then we can do it ourselves, and we actually don't need to rely on governments. I think people are so handicapped when they just rely on the government, because as soon as the government doesn't come through, it's like, oh, my life's cooked. And it's like, well, stop relying on other people. Like, take some self responsibility, start investing your money in Bitcoin, and like, wake up, because these guys aren't here to save you. They aren't here to help you. And like, I can lean Trump and I can lean this way, I can lean that way. Like, at the end of the day, like the government is going to have to print money, whether we think Trump's going to tighten the budget or not. We have set up a system to fail. It is a broken system, and we have to continue to print our way out of it. Otherwise, it just comes crashing down. And so I just love that idea that everyone's Bitcoin journey and Bitcoin's introduction is different, and they can apply it to their life very personally and very individually. And it's not just the targeted group for people that are anti-government, anti-this, anti-that. I think you'll probably become that as Bitcoin attracts you away into this new line of thinking. But yeah, no, it is cool that it's a very personal journey. And if you are trying to orange pill someone, or if you're listening to this and you don't know about Bitcoin, like apply it to your own circumstances. Like, what do you want to see different about your life? And I think Bitcoin will improve that like 10 to 100 fold, even just by getting into it with a few dollars, $10, $100. Like, there is no set amount. And that sort of leads us into the next question. Like, what is like this big misconception about Bitcoin, like with this unit bias? So I hear so many people say you need one whole coin, like, oh, it's too expensive. I should just buy XRP, like it's only $2. Like I can actually get heaps of those. They could be the next Bitcoin. What would be like your counter to that and sort of explain how divisible Bitcoin is?
Yeah, the first thing I say to most people is, do you know what XRP is used for? Like, do you know what like the purpose of the cheap coin is? Like, what does it do exactly? Typically they don't know, so that's the first red flag. But main thing is you have to explain, like, first off, you don't have to buy a whole Bitcoin. Trust me, if that was the case, I would never have a whole Bitcoin. I can't buy a whole Bitcoin at once, but you can buy a piece of a Bitcoin. That's also true for investments. You don't have to buy an entire share of Tesla or an entire share of Berkshire Hathaway or an entire share of the S&P 500. You can buy a piece of it. So Bitcoin's not so different from the things that you're already familiar with. That's another thing. Letting people know that Bitcoin's actually not as alien as they might think, with payments. Again, it's just like PayPal, just like Venmo. You can scan a QR and pay someone. You can type in their name and pay someone. It's very fast. Buying Bitcoin, it's just as easy as buying S&P 500. It's just as easy as you investing in your Roth IRA. It's very fast, it's very divisible, and it's highly liquid. In fact, it's the most liquid market on earth, all right, because it's 24/7. So therefore, it is literally the most liquid market in the world. And there's always a buyer, always a seller. At least for now, there won't always be a seller in the future. But let's keep it for the present. Um, yeah, you don't have to buy a whole Bitcoin. You can buy $10 worth. I know my friend literally buys $1 worth a day. You know what I mean? And sometimes he'll buy more, like randomly. Like if the price is down, he'll buy more. But his base dollar cost average, his DCA, is $1 every day, and then like $100 whenever he feels like it. You know what I mean? So you can literally buy $1 worth of Bitcoin. And you don't have to think that owning an entire Bitcoin is the only way that you're ever going to have any sort of money. This is true. Okay, lock in for what I'm about to say. There's going to come a time in the future where one Bitcoin is like $1.5 million. So if you own 10% of a Bitcoin, that means you have $150,000. How cool is that? Um, is it as cool as 1.5 million? No. But are you gonna take that 150,000 and throw it in the trash because it's not as good as 1.5 million? Yeah, no, I don't think so. Instead, what you're gonna do is you're gonna hold on to that 10% of a Bitcoin, and you're gonna try to grow that to 11% and then maybe 12%. Because right now it's a lot easier. In the future, it's gonna be a lot harder. The same way in the past, it was a lot easier to get to one Bitcoin. Today, it's a lot harder. In the future, it's going to be impossible, right? So it is what it is. Not everyone's going to be able to have one coin. It is what it is. But not everyone's going to be able to have point 0.1 either. Not everyone's going to be able to have point 0.01. That's 1 million Satoshis. That's 1% of a Bitcoin. Not everyone's going to be able to have that. All right. 15 years from now, they will look back and they'll say, oh my gosh, you have 1% of a whole Bitcoin? You have 1 million Satoshis? Hey guys, this guy's a millionaire. Hey everybody, this guy's a millionaire. He has 1% of a Bitcoin. Oh my goodness. Can I take a picture with you? So again, you can say that it's impossible. It's impossible. If you have 50 Bitcoin right now, that means that you have a lot of money. There was a point where 50 Bitcoins was only like $500. So just, you don't have to believe me. Time will tell. But what I'm saying is true. So you don't have to have one Bitcoin. You just have to have more than zero.
Just on top of what you just said, so we're looking at today's price is like it was nearly $110,000 the other day with that rise up, and we're now just sitting at like 104, 105,000 US. Do you think it is a good time to smash buy Bitcoin if you have the capital? Maybe you've learned a little bit. You're starting your Bitcoin journey. You're starting from zero. Should you be smash buying Bitcoin today, or should you be waiting and DCA, which is dollar cost average over the next few months, years, essentially averaging out your buy price of Bitcoin?
Uh, it's very hard to say, but the answer to both is just yes. You know, there's technically not really a right or wrong way. Let's just say that you have $10,000 just sitting aside somehow, and would I recommend you put the whole 10,000 in right now? Honestly, no. What I would say is maybe put in 5,000 immediately, and then from there you would dollar cost average the rest. Maybe you do 100 a week, right? From there you do 100 a week, and you slowly let that kind of bleed in. And over time, what you're gonna find is that you actually gained a lot of purchasing power because you bought the highs and you bought the lows, right? Give it 4 years. 4 years is a short time horizon for any investment, right? If you were buying real estate as an investment, you would think 4 years out minimum, right? So when you're buying Bitcoin, you need to think 4 years out minimum. And when you look back in 4 years, regardless of what happens with the price, because of the way that Bitcoin's economics work, you can come back to this video. I guarantee you'll have more money at the end of 4 years on your fifth year, right? As you go into that fifth year, you'll be up on your investment because of the way that Bitcoin works, the way that it cuts the supply in half every 4 years, right? Supply and demand, the supply is cut in half. If the demand remains the same, you get twice the price. But what if the demand doubles? What if the demand triples? It seems like every other day, Bitcoin's demand is going up because more people want good money. They want hard money. They want an asset that is ruled by math and by thermodynamics and not by greedy bankers and old people who are literally senile and geriatric, right? So people with common sense are gravitating towards Bitcoin. So not only is the demand growing, the supply is getting cut in half. So that's the reason why the economics of Bitcoin are that it pretty much always doubles every 4 years at a bare minimum. And that's what we've seen historically. We've seen way more than that actually, but that's like the bare minimum that we typically see.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I do sort of recommend like with people like you shouldn't be smash buying $10,000 or $5,000 if you have zero conviction because if you see a 10% drop in the next few weeks, which we can see with Bitcoin, you're gonna text me and go, "You scammed me! Like this is a scam. You told me it went up," and I'm like, "Bro, I told you hold for 4 years and you'll be chilling, my boy." So yeah, you do have to have the conviction. Like you're gonna be riding some quite a bit of volatility, but what we're sort of seeing is, especially right now, I would say we're in a pretty healthy bull environment with what's going on, just with how much demand there is with ETFs, publicly traded companies, governments. So there are like good opportunities to buy, and I'd just say like any time right now is a good opportunity to buy, and I can say that confidently without an 80% drop around the corner. But technically, I don't know that. So you do need to know what you're holding. You do need to know this is a 4 year minimum plan, and then this is something that potentially I want to pass on to my kids one day. So you have to see it like that. It's not just a get rich quick scheme. Like if you want to do that, go join the meme coins, the fart coins, and all that stuff because that's where you can have a bit of fun with gambling and just separate crypto and Bitcoin. Now, before we wrapped up, I also just wanted to ask like, so we're a similar age now, like we're in our early 20s, and I just want like, what's some advice you can give to someone that's our age? So maybe we're out of school now, we've moved into university or college or whatever you want to call it, and maybe we're going into a full time role job or just maybe a casual employment, but we're still early in life. Maybe we haven't had kids yet, maybe we're not married yet. What does that look like? And like, what would be a piece of advice you can give to young people today?
Again, this is just my opinion. It's not like I'm some sort of ultra rich guru, but I would say if you can, live with your parents for as long as you can, right? Some people will disagree with that. They'll make fun of you. They'll try to bully you. They'll say this, they'll say that. But the truth is, a lot of people are kind of forced to do that. So if you have the choice to try to do it and as a way to build a foundation for yourself, then go ahead and give it a shot because only in America are we kind of like, and again, maybe I'm speaking and this is incorrect, but it seems like in America you're very much forced to try to get out of your parents' house right at 18, which is very funny. But that was actually doable like back in the day. And now it's, you could do it, don't get me wrong, but your quality of life will suffer and you'll probably just not have the best time in the world. If your family doesn't hate you, and you don't hate your family, probably a good idea to stay there for a little bit and build up something so that way you're not just out there racking up debt and getting poorer every single day, right? That's the first thing. Again, a lot of people are not going to like that. They will literally bully you. It is what it is. But, the position I'm in, is partially because I was able to live with my family. You know what I mean? I still live with my family right now. And could I leave? Could I go do something else? Yeah, absolutely. I could leave today, but I kind of want to just pay the house off, and then go buy my own house. You know what I mean? Like, and that's something that most people, you're not gonna be able to do that. I'm gonna be honest. If someone's a hater and they're like, oh well, you're live with your parents, blah blah blah. I'm like, well, look, we can go band for band. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's just a true statement. That's just a true thing that can actually happen. So that's my first thing, and then secondly, like, really, really try to stay away from high interest debt that you can't manage or can't handle. Again, I live my life a lot on credit cards, but I don't pay interest on credit cards. You know what I mean? Because I don't want to get poorer. You know what I mean? I don't want to make the bank richer. The bank gets a guaranteed 30% every time I carry a balance, a statement balance. I never do that. If there's 0% interest for 18 months, I will use it for 18 months straight. All right. I'll pay the bill on time every time. And then as soon as it starts to get interest on it, I pay the whole thing off. And then I just put a subscription on it. That way it doesn't close. You don't want your credit lines to close because that hurts your credit history, right? You want to have credit cards open like forever, but you just want to put something small on there so it's not closed, but you're not paying high interest on it, right? That's just what I like to do. Some people cannot do that. They can't control their impulses. They get too far in. They get too deep. They didn't actually do the math on when their checks would hit and when they would have to pay off the credit card and when they'd run out of the free interest. Then you get stuck in a hole because you have $5,000 on a 30% interest credit card, which means you're adding like what, 1,500 extra dollars on there every single month that it rolls over. That's bad. You're cooked. Now you have to default on the credit line, which then hurts your credit score forever, pretty much. Not forever, but you basically either have to file bankruptcy or you're just not going to be able to like own assets unless you have a lot of cash on hand. So don't do that. All right. If you have high interest debt like student loans, try to knock those out really quick. Just get that out of there. You do not want to be in debt in general. Okay. The new age slaves are all in debt. All right. You become a wage slave because you're in so much debt that you have to go work yourself to the bone 24/7. You don't get any vacations, no breaks, and your job doesn't actually pay you enough to get ahead. It just pays you enough to keep your head above water, and you don't want to be in that situation. So just minimize your debt, okay? Maximize and leverage the tools available to you and the resources available to you, the people available to you, right? If there's people who are willing to, house you because they don't hate you, then that's probably a good idea. And if you don't have that, then find some friends that you can try to split the rent with. You don't have to be by yourself in like a 2 bedroom apartment or something like that. That's stupid. I know there's some people who actually do that. That's stupid. You should try to either live 1 bedroom or again try to combine finances with someone. All right. If you're a guy, don't be dealing with a bunch of gold diggers. Don't be an idiot. All right. Like just don't waste money on women who hate you. Don't be an idiot. A lot of people who do that. And just stack sats, bro. Stack sats or die trying. You know what I'm saying? Don't quit your day job, even though Bitcoin does a 10x, right? Bitcoin does a 10x and it's amazing. And you look back 5 years ago, you were in this position. Now, 5 years later, and you're in a different one. Don't quit your day job because there's going to be drawdowns, there's going to be volatility, and you have to try to find a way to maximize your day job. Find a way to get a raise or a promotion at your day job. Or find a way to work in Bitcoin. Find a way to make money off your passion, monetize the things that you care about, that you're knowledgeable about. Take that money, put it back into your craft, right? Really monetize yourself, double down on yourself, try really hard to do the things that you actually want to do, because the truth is, everyone wants to work. Everyone wants to do stuff. It's just that you're probably doing something that you hate and that makes you want to die, right? So like try not to like double down on that. Double down on something that like makes you a little bit happier, right? But also like try to make money. You know what I mean? So there's a balance to everything in life. Sometimes you have to do what you have to do until you can do what you want to do. Focus on doing what you have to do until you don't have to do it anymore, and then make the transition. All right, but just do what you got to do, man. Don't be an idiot. Don't waste all your money. Don't be a degenerate gambler. Okay, I love gambling. Don't be a degenerate gambler. All right, it's like being an alcoholic and then liking drinking. You know what I mean? Like there is a difference. All right, there's a difference between getting high every now and then and being a drug addict. All right, so don't be a drug addict. Don't be an addict. Don't be an idiot. Don't be a degenerate. So if you just follow those kind of basic steps, you're gonna be all right. There's a lot of other stuff you got to do in between that, but if you follow what I just said, you're probably gonna be okay. You're probably gonna be a-okay. Just make sure you stack your sats and just stay humble. Don't trade your Bitcoin. Don't be like, oh, it's up 10%. I'm gonna sell it and it's gonna go down 20%. Like don't do that. Okay, don't do that. Especially because again, you're probably on Coinbase. They're charging you like 1% transaction fee every time you buy or sell it. So you didn't actually sell at 10% up. You sold it 9%, and you didn't actually buy it 20% down. You bought it 19%. You know what I'm saying? So like, just don't do that. Okay. You are not a genie. You cannot predict the future. Not in that way. What you can do is you can stack your sats and hold on to them. That's my epic rant for this video.
Awesome. I'll have to clip that. Just to add on to that, like Bitcoin has taught me how to save. Like it has changed my spending habits from just going straight buy and then anything extra, just like spend it on clothes, spend it on Amazon products, spend it on video games, spend it on whatever. And I would just chuck money left, right, and center. I would go expensive dinners. I'd do this, I'd do that. Because as a young person in today's society, you think there is no hope. You think there is no long-term goal. You just think as long as I scrape by, like what you said, head above water, then I'm okay and I'm doing fine and I'm doing what everyone else is doing. My goal is to get out of the house ASAP, scrape by with my mortgage payments, my house payments, and I'll be happy one day. And it's like, I'm sorry, but you're going to be, what you said, cooked. And what you should be trying to do fresh out of school, don't rush into a degree that you think you really want, but you actually are going to hate it. Maybe just go get a half decent paying job that's full-time labor, full-time this. You don't need this huge education. If you can stack more sats than someone that's going to uni, going to college, then you're going to get ahead of them regardless. And you might actually be able to do something that you're passionate about and not just hate your life forever. I think people can cut out things like excessive drinking, excessive smoking, excessive partying, all these things. Like these are the type of people like at my work that tell me I don't have even a dollar to give to Satoshi. I don't even have a dollar to buy Bitcoin. And I go, you pack, like you smoke a pack a day, you drink 8 beers a night, you do this, you do that. You can cut out that nonsense and swap it for something that's going to set you up for the future. So all you have to do is tighten your budget and you will find those dollars that you can put in Satoshis. And then on top of that, like what you said, combining incomes. So I actually got married very, very young. I'm 21 and I got married this year, which is very uncommon. I'm a very traditional conservative mother hubber. But me and my wife combine our savings like very traditionally. We have very low rent, so it's with family friends. We pay in cash. It's very doable, and I knew that that was my balance. I didn't want to live at my mom and dad's house married. I was happy to go, which I'm not against that, but we wanted our own space. We got this beautiful little place. We pay cash. We can still stack sats, and I found the balance. And so I've come to her and been like, babe, let's sell the car, let's sell the couch, let's sell the TV, let's sell this, let's sell that. Do you want to know how that went down? Terribly. She's like, you need to find a balance. She's like, I'm all in with you. Like, all good. She supports me. She's like, I trust you, but we need to find a balance. I still want to live good. I still want to live in this beautiful little place. I still want to live this life we have, but I'm happy to stack sats on the side. So for now on, anything that we have extra at the end of the week, after rent, after groceries, after this, after that, I'm happy to put it in Bitcoin. And that has been a perfect balance. Like I'm stacking comfortably 100,000 to 200,000 Satoshis a week. I'm 21 and we're getting it done. And it's just because we've been making some smart decisions. I've reduced my spending on clothes. I've reduced my spendings on the chocolate bars I buy that are $9 now at the shops. I just buy Whole Foods. And Bitcoin will make you a flippin' carnivore, that's for sure. You start buying steak, you start buying eggs, you start buying milk, you start looking after your health. It essentially creeps into all aspects of your life, completely changes all your perspectives, and all it does is provide hope for the future that you didn't have before. So if you're a young person today, it's not just better money, it's not just digital gold, it's not just digital property. It is essentially a new system, a new hope for the future, and you should be getting yourself some sats. So what Gen Z BTC always ends with is stack sats or die trying. And I love that statement because essentially, if you're not, you will die without sats. And yeah, it's just, I've loved having you on here, bro. Any final words, or are you happy to leave it there?
Yeah, nah, man, that last little segment that you just gave, I can give an entire hour rant about that. You know, the balance between wanting to sell all your stuff that you don't really need and buying Bitcoin, and then also being able to like live life and actually spend money. There's always going to be opportunity costs. Every time you buy food is a time that you could have bought Bitcoin, and then 10 years down the line, that would have been a lot of money. But you have to live every day. So it's not just about thinking, oh, I need to buy so much Bitcoin so I can be rich in the future. It's about living your life now, and then when the time comes, living your rich life with your Bitcoin or with your income or whatever it might be. So don't see Bitcoin as a way to get rich quick. See Bitcoin as a way to stop getting poor slowly. It's a great way to envision your savings and planning for your future, while also being able to take care of what you got to take care of today. So just put that money aside. Don't even think about it. And one day it'll come back. Your future self will look back at your past self and you'll be like, oh, God, that was such a great decision. Good for me. That's what you'll say. You'll say, good for me.
Well,
Well, awesome having you, bro. I hope we can do this again one day. But I enjoyed this chat with you. You're obviously extremely Bitcoin educated. You have an awesome understanding. I think for your age, for our age, it's awesome that we got in early and we're not having to deal with this at 50 or 60 years old. And I think this will inspire young people today. So leave a subscribe to Gen Z BTC. Go follow him. He makes some banger videos. He uploads regularly. And I hope we can do this more often.
cheers,
Yes,
guys.
absolutely. See ya.
See ya.
Alrighty, guys. Today we're here with Gen Z BTC, and we're going to be asking him some questions about his Bitcoin journey and his channel. That is absolutely